What's up, everybody? Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be doing some quick spoiler review for Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm not going to take too much time with this, mainly because I don't really have too much to say, but I wanted to do a spoiler review so I could talk about some of the things that I can't really talk about in the spoiler-free review, and just to get a little bit more thoughts on my movie out there. So, number one, spoilers, I want to talk about Iron Man. He's barely in the movie. Well, I shouldn't say barely in the movie. That would be like saying Pepper Potts is barely in the movie, because she has one scene at the very end. That's like saying, John Bernthal's barely in Baby Driver, because he has 2 scenes. It's that kind of thing. He has a couple scenes. He's in it throughout consistently, but not a lot, to the point where it's like, I don't know. I was totally cool with this. I didn't have a problem with this at all. So he's used sparingly. He's a little bit of a dick in this movie. So this is my problem with it. Okay. So we have all the movies, leading up to Civil War. He's like smug and arrogant, but it's like he starts in a really smug place, and he becomes a much better guy as the movie goes on. As all the series goes on, he becomes a much better guy, and it gets to the point where he's like, this guy's really great. Like in Age of Ultron, it's like, ooh, he messed up because he created Ultron to try to kill everybody. He didn't know that was going to happen. He was just trying to do the right thing. But then we go into Civil War, and it's like he's totally feeling bad for it. He's a great... I think he's like one of the best guys in Civil War. And Captain America's... I love him. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Iron Man and Spider-Man. So, Iron Man, in that movie, I was like, yes, I can get behind this guy 100% now. And then all of a sudden this movie comes out, and it's like, why'd we backpedal? Why'd we go backwards? Why'd we take him being much more mature and evolved and turn him back into the gimmicky, D-bag character? Was it just because it was for funny, just for jokes? And I know there are moments in this movie when you see him being like, no, I was handling the situation. I was trying to do it in a legal way. I was trying to get the, get the police to handle this. I wasn't going to do it myself anymore. I'm done trying to solve these problems when I just create more. And that's where I'm like, yeah, this is the guy I want to see more of. And I'm specifically referring to the ferry situation when he's like, no, I'm the one who got the FBI to go there. Who do you think did that? That was me. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell Peter then? I don't know. I just feel like other times in the movie, it's like, this is, I don't quite understand his deal. But hopefully he's better in Infinity War. Now, as for the high school comedy aspect of the movie, like I said, this is how high schoolers are. We're a bunch of idiots. And so I loved seeing all the high schoolers in this movie being a bunch of idiots. So I thought that was great. And I love the Ferris Bueller parallels. There's even one scene when Spider-Man's running through the backyards of all these different houses. And it's like, if you're familiar with these old movies, I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I watch it all the time. If you're familiar with these old, like, John Hughes movies, like, you're gonna notice, like, there's a lot of parallels here. There's that scene when Spider-Man's running through all the backyards, and then it just cuts to that scene that it's parodying from Ferris Bueller. It's like, that was perfect. That was great. So I loved the comedy in this movie, and there's a lot of great, like, funny lead up to the DC situation where they go to Washington, like, where everyone's like, why is Peter, like, what are you doing? And he's like, I have the Stark internship. And they're like, yeah, sure. Like, you've never been in a room with Tony Stark. It's like, he's Spider-Man. It's great. And then there's that scene in the gym where that girl's Liz Allen. She's like, oh, I love Spider-Man. And then you got Ned just being like, Peter knows him. And it's great. I think all that stuff's pretty funny. I really think all the humor in this movie really lands for me. And then, man, it gets pretty intense during that DC, that Washington DC decathlon situation where they're all going up in the Washington Monument. And then, like, the whole time, so Peter figures out Ned has this bomb in his backpack, and then he winds up stuck in this storage facility, which is hilarious because he goes through all these different training simulations to get really good with the suit, and then it's like, okay, it's like a big huge montage, and then he's like, okay, how long do we have left till, the door opens up? And then the girl in his head, I forget what he names her, but I think it's similar to Friday from what Tony has. She's like, well, it's only been 30 minutes, and he's like, oh, god dang it. So then he has to get out of there, use like a little school calculator. I have a much more advanced version than Peter Parker, and he uses his to get out of there, so it's pretty funny. And then he climbs away, so it's great. And then it's super intense, too, because you're watching, like, Ned in the elevator, and you're watching the thing, like, blowing holes in his backpack without him realizing. Compromises the elevator structure. The elevator plummets, or it's about to anyways, and you know, Peter, he's climbing the wall outside the Washington Memorial. He's trying to get up there, or monument. He's trying to get up there to get in, and he gets up there, and he's like, oh, I'm so high up, and then it's like, your parachute was never reinstalled, and he's like, oh, shoot. And then he has to get in there, and he can't break the window. It's super intense. He does that whole flying thing. He busts in. If you've seen the movie, right? You've seen it? Okay, good. So he busts in. He saves everyone from the elevator, which is also great. He's hanging upside down, and you have the voice in his ear like, kiss her. Go ahead and kiss her, which is hilarious because it's like talking about the Tobey Maguire scene, you know, that iconic shot of Spider-Man kissing Mary Jane in the rain, and then all of a sudden the elevator just, and it knocks him way down to the dust. It's great. Which is also really funny because this movie throws a lot of subtle shade at the previous Spider-Man movies. There's a scene, Liz, she falls straight down this big, huge elevator shaft, and Peter just, bam, and catches her. Whereas in The Amazing Spider-Man, it's like that whole slow-mo sequence with Gwen Stacy's like, she gets her, and then she still dies. So there's a lot of subtle shade thrown at the other movies, which is hilarious. I love it. And then that DC situation was actually one of my favorite parts of the movie. I thought that was like the only intense part that I was like, ooh, what's going to happen? But the rest of the movie, it's like, yeah, it's a Marvel movie. It's kind of predictable. So his new suit, I think it has too many abilities. There's a bit too much going on with it. Like, he has all these different web shooter combinations, which is hilarious. It's really funny. It's just, he's a little OP nowadays, where it's like Spider-Man never used to be that crazy overpowered unless he was like Iron Spider, but he is just so overpowered with his normal Spider-Man suit, where it's like, there's this many possible, like, you can do all this crazy stuff, and then I love how it keeps setting him to insta-kill mode, and he's like, I don't want to kill anybody, and it's like, okay. I thought that was pretty funny. He has taser webs, which is great. So there's a lot of great stuff, like a lot of great jokes that come out of the suit. I just feel like maybe we have too many abilities with it. And it also takes away from Spider-Man a little bit because he no longer has Spidey senses, from what I can tell. I know Kevin Feige's like, yeah, he does, but clearly not, because he takes a lot of random hits that no Spider-Man before him, like no movie Spider-Man, would have been able to take. They would have all dodged that stuff a mile away, but he doesn't have Spidey sense, so I don't know. It's just too many abilities, too little Spidey sense. The homecoming scene was, man, that was the other intense moment. So Peter and Liz, they're on their way to homecoming, and you find out that the Vulture is actually Liz's dad, and so there's that scene when they're in the car driving, and I love watching, you know, Michael Keaton, I forget what his character's name is still, you just watch the gears in his head turning, and he's like, wait a minute, like, this is all fairly convenient, how Spider-Man's always where you are, and how you disappear and Spider-Man shows up, and he figures it out, and then he's like, alright, you gotta get out of here, I gotta talk to Peter, and then he pulls out a gun, and he's like, that's when he gives that whole, like, you don't mess with me or I will kill you and everybody you love from the trailers, and it's like, oh my god, that's an intense scene right there. And then what follows after, he's like, no, you go in there, you show my daughter a good time, or I'm gonna kill you. And then Peter goes in there, and he immediately books it, goes out and becomes Spider-Man, and then Shocker shows up and is just having pounding him into buses and everything, and Ned shows up and shoots him with the web. It's hilarious. And that part was also pretty intense. But man, this movie, like, I liked it a lot, so I don't know, I really enjoyed it. The final battle, there's one scene in the final battle in particular that really got me like, whew, this, I don't know how he's getting out of this, which is when the Vulture, like, you're seeing the big wings flying all around Peter, and it's knocking down pillars, and then all of a sudden the roof just collapses on him, and he's crushed under all this rubble, and it's like, he's strong enough to survive under it, but he's crushed by so much that he just can't get up, and he's trying so hard, and he's freaking out, and that is like the most vulnerable I think I've ever seen a superhero in a superhero movie, and it's crazy to just watch him panic. He's like trying to lift the thing off him, he can't, and then there's that, he like looks into the water and he sees half the reflection of his face and half the reflection of Spider-Man. Very iconic Spider-Man imagery. and then he like gets the strength, lifts the thing off of him, he gets out of there, and then the rest of the battle ensues, and it's kind of a generic end battle. Like, it doesn't even, like, Spider-Man and the Vulture don't even throw down that much, mostly because if Spider-Man landed some hits on Vulture, you'd been gone. He'd been a goner. You know, you got one of the strongest characters in the MCU with brute strength, just pounding down on a normal human. That guy's dead. So it's understandable that they didn't go that route. And you even watch, like, Peter never, like, really throws down hard with people in this movie. Like, with the criminals that are robbing the bank at the start, he never, like, really, like, lays a good hit on one of them because he doesn't want to kill them. He knows he's too strong. So I love that. And I also love the secret identity aspect of this, how he keeps his secret identity. I always find that stuff very interesting in superhero movies. It always reminds me of Ben 10, if you remember the old Ben 10 cartoons. Cash and JT, they were the bullies. They bullied Ben all the time, but they loved the aliens that he turned into. They were like big fanboys of the aliens, and then they bullied Ben. And so it was an interesting dynamic, and I know it was paralleling, like, or it was at least paying homage to, like, this stuff that was happening all the time in Spider-Man and everything like that. So I love seeing that stuff in this, like, movie where it's like Flash and everyone loves Spider-Man, and then they're all like, Peter's a loser. So I love seeing that kind of stuff. It always reminds me of Ben 10, which is a throwback to this kind of stuff. So it's great. It all comes full circle for me. I love it. Those are my thoughts for Spider-Man Homecoming. If you haven't seen my spoiler-free review, definitely go check it out. And thank you guys all for watching. That's really all I had to say. Hope you enjoyed. D-Man.